Could this be the greatest season from a point guard ever? The case for John Stockton is an intriguing one. One of the greatest floor generals was at his absolute peak, and he was breaking records left and right. We have never seen a player dominate with his passing like this. In the 1989-90 season, John Stockton held the point guards of today to an impossible standard. It was a season full of historic ups, but also had a heartbreaking ending. We must start with his legendary stat line. He averaged 17.2 points on 51% shooting, 14.5 assists, 2.7 steals, and 2.6 rebounds per game. Ladies and gentlemen, that is the highest assist per game average for a single season ever. No one else has ever averaged over 14 assists per game. That is a record that will most likely never be broken. Since then, the player that has come the closest to reaching that record was Russell Westbrook in the 2020-21 season. He averaged 11.7 assists per game. However, he posted 4.8 turnovers per game compared to the 3.5 that Stockton averaged. If any player is serious about touching that passing record, they have to be as efficient and as selfless as John was. Even then, it's still never going to happen. The league and the role of the point guard have changed too much. For example, this is what Sam Smith wrote for ESPN after Stockton announced that he was retiring. This is a different era, and the position reflects the times, self-involvement, ego, personal ambition, sort of the Enron era of the point guards. Get your own first is what the point guards of this era do. They score, they look good. The best coaches like Larry Brown make them shooting guards, as he did with Allen Iverson. They don't think about others first, they are just products of their times. In a world screaming for attention, Stockton hits the mute button. End of quote. Keep in mind that this was written in 2003. In today's league, everyone looks like a more efficient version of Allen Iverson. No one looks like John Stockton. The analytics say that a team is better off when a point guard has a more scorers mentality rather than having the mindset of getting everyone involved first. That may be the case for the way the game is being played now, but the Jazz weren't exactly struggling to win games due to the way John opted to play. Everything was set up perfectly for him to take his game to this level. In the previous year, there was a very important change that impacted this franchise forever. Head coach Frank Layden announced his retirement 1 month into the season. He mentioned that the pressure in the NBA was too intense, and the heart attack that NFL coach Mike Ditka suffered that year really woke him up. With him stepping down, the team announced that assistant coach Jerry Sloan would be his replacement. Frank knew that they would be in great hands with the former All-Star player. He even said this to reporters: "You're not going to find a guy who works harder than Jerry Sloan. I saw how he loved the game, how he related to the players, and how the players respected him." End of quote. Every great player needs that one great coach who pushes their game to another level. That's what he was for both Stockton and Malone. He wanted the offense to run as perfectly as possible, and John was up for the task. The system that he implemented was the flex offense. It involves constant movement from all 5 players, using a variety of cuts and screens in multiple areas of the floor. The system isn't complex, but the variations are endless. It's part of the reason why it's such an effective system. When the right player runs it, you get a lot of easy baskets. Jerry Sloan couldn't have asked for a better player to run the offense. He was fully unleashed, and he was passing at a rate that we've never seen before. There were 10 total games where he dished out over 20 assists. He is the only player to do it that many times in a single season. His best performance came against the New York Knicks when he had 27 assists along with 18 points, 3 rebounds, and 2 steals. Then there was a game against the Los Angeles Clippers where he dished out 20 assists and only recorded 1 turnover. That is the type of efficiency that is rarely seen with a volume passer. That is why many league observers have mentioned that he is the greatest point guard in the half-court setting. He was even being mentioned in the same breath as Magic Johnson. For many people, these were the 2 best point guards in the game. Late in the season, he got to make his case in the bright lights of Los Angeles.
UConn needs some scoring. Stockton slices in. There's a way of getting it. For UConn, a bit of a run, down by 12. Stockton finds Griffith.
Younger days, now he can afford to own the autos.
Stockton coming around a screen. Wellick's not in the lineup when the Lakers beat Utah earlier this year.
2 screens, 3. Nice play.
Try to get the pass into Green. It's taken away by Stockton. Here is Hansen.
He finished the game with 15 points on 58% shooting, 15 assists, and 2 steals. It was one of many performances that proved how skilled of a playmaker he was. After the type of season he had, there were many giving him glowing praises. For example, this is what Phoenix Suns coach Con Fitzsimmons said to the LA Times that year. "When I think of John Stockton, I think of smartness. I think of a guy being at the right place at the right time, all the time during the course of a game. The word you probably use with John Stockton is alertness." Then there's what former Laker player and longtime broadcaster for the Jazz, Hot Rod Hundley, said in that same article. "I think he is the best point guard to ever play the game. I don't consider Magic Johnson a point guard, let's clear that right up. But for the position and what John Stockton is supposed to do, nobody is better." Magic Johnson had no problems with people saying that. He also said this about his rival, according to Sam Smith. "Nobody distributes the ball and reads his team like John Stockton. No one knows how to get everyone involved like John. But what sets him apart is his toughness. He gets knocked down and gets right up." It was the ultimate compliment. He wasn't as versatile or flashy as Magic was. He also didn't have any athletic advantage over any of his opponents. His brilliance was more subtle.
You played against him, you had to outthink him. It's like chess playing against him. You know, it wasn't like you going out there, who's going to be the quickest. No, this is chess. This is a long 48-minute game that you had to think about every move, every possession you had to make.
He was more concerned with setting up the highlight reel for his teammates rather than creating his own. He lived to make everyone else better rather than boosting his numbers. That's what truly makes him a one-of-a-kind player. But let's get one thing straight. He was much more than just a great facilitator.
I always tell everybody, man, people always ask me who was the toughest player that I played against, and I always say John Stockton. They say, why? I don't get that. Why not Michael Jordan? I would always tell them, a guy who only plays 32 minutes or 33 minutes, which Jerry Sloan had in his rotation, when a guy who gets on the floor, who only shoots the ball 10 times, makes 8, has 16 assists, fool around and have 6 or 7 rebounds and 4 or 5 steals, and you look at his stats, and you say, what did he have? 24, 16, 7, and 4. How can you beat that?
He also finished second in steals. The all-time steals leader doesn't get nearly enough credit for what he can do on the other side of the floor. Jerry Sloan explained how he was so good at creating turnovers in 1988. John used to be out there chasing guys around, but he's learned that players like Maurice Cheeks really pick off someone in the open court. They get their steals by using their hands when they're in traffic, by doubling down on big men, or by playing the passing lanes. End of quote. By doing that, he avoided hurting his team by taking unnecessary gambles in the open court. He was very efficient in how and when he got his steals. That certainly played a big part in the Jazz posting the 5th best defensive rating in the league.
John Stockton probably helps us as much in that area as anything by what he tries to do from a defensive standpoint. John's not as nasty a player, I guess you might say, as I was. I had that reputation, but he's a lot smarter player than I was.
But that's not all that we can say. Some people make the mistake of misjudging what he can do on the scoring end. Make no mistake about it, if he wanted to score more, he could have easily averaged over 20 points per game. He was very crafty in his drives to the rim, and he was a great outside shooter. He shot 42% from the 3, which was the 8th highest percentage in the league. His improvement in that aspect made him such a dangerous player. In the past, teams strictly played the assist when covering him, but now they had to worry about his jump shot, since the opposition had to respect his scoring ability that opened up the floor for him to do what he did best. There were very little weaknesses in his game. The numbers in the eye test clearly suggest that this was his greatest season. He was in the prime of his career, and the Jazz were in a great position for a deep playoff run, especially with the way Karl Malone was performing. He also posted the greatest statistical season of his career. He averaged his career high of 31 points per game on 56% shooting. Their 2 star players were at the peak of their powers. They led Utah to 55 wins, which was the 4th best record in the West. During this time, the Western Conference was stacked with great teams and players. They were not going to have an easy road in the playoffs. Their first round matchup was against the Phoenix Suns. They were led by Kevin Johnson, Tom Chambers, and future Jazz player Jeff Hornacek. Just for context, this team finished with 54 wins. They had the highest net rating, the highest simple rating system, the second highest points per game average, the third highest offensive rating, and the sixth highest defensive rating. Utah was going to have their hands full with this team. As the series progressed, it was obvious that their depth was a problem. They won games 2 and 3 by 18 and 15 points. Their defense was also giving Karl Malone problems. He was contained to 33% in Game 2 and 38% in Game 3. Their backs were against the wall and they needed to respond. In Game 4, they were back to playing Utah Jazz basketball. John Stockton recorded 16 points on 50% shooting along with 14 assists. And the mailman was back to his dominant self. He had 33 points on 54% shooting, 11 rebounds, and 5 steals. The Jazz won by 11 points and they had a golden opportunity to send the Phoenix Suns home. This set up one of the forgotten classics of the 90s. It was a back and forth battle with each team trading big shots in the final minutes. Unfortunately for John Stockton, he was struggling to make shots. He only had 9 points on 27% shooting. Although he was struggling with his shot, he was killing Phoenix with his passing. He posted 17 assists and only committed 1 turnover. With the Jazz down by 2 points, he made a great feed to Karl Malone that tied the game. All they needed was 1 stop to force overtime.
McGee back to Kevin Johnson, and he scores, and there are 0.8 of a second remaining. Phoenix.
Kevin Johnson made a huge shot with 0.8 seconds left. The Jazz couldn't respond, and that was the end of their season. With Malone and Stockton playing at the top of their games, you would have never guessed they would have all ended in the first round. Although it was a devastating blow, we don't want to take anything away from what John Stockton accomplished. The traditional point guard role seems to be extinct in today's game. There really isn't anyone that we can truly define as a pass-first player. But John was the embodiment of that style. He proved that you could also dominate with your passing. For one glorious season, no one was better in that aspect. But what about you all? What do you remember the most from this season? Do you think this was the greatest regular season from a point guard? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching.